You felt it, that pull, the hunger that never fills, the want that leaves you emptier every time you feed it. This isn't about denying pleasure. It's about seeing the difference between what you want and what wants you. Every scroll, every craving, every midnight impulse, they all whisper the same lie. One more will be enough, but it never is. This is not a book of comfort. It's a mirror. And what you'll see in it isn't the world's chains, it's your own. Desire is not your enemy, but the trap it sets will consume you if you don't learn to walk past it. Welcome to the Stoic way, the art of silence over craving, strength over surrender. Welcome to Darkwood Audiobooks. Subscribe and step into the dark where truth replaces temptation. You thought you were choosing. You were being chosen. You didn't see it happen. One decision at a time, one click, one swipe, one bite, one excuse that felt harmless in the moment. You told yourself you were in control, but control doesn't beg. Control doesn't refresh the screen at 2 a.m., hoping for a dopamine crumb. Control doesn't rationalize the same mistake for the 10th time this month. Let's start here. Most men don't lose their lives to one catastrophic failure. They lose it to 1,000 small surrenders, a slow leak, a daily trade where they give up a piece of themselves for something that feels good right now. And desire is patient. It doesn't need to break you today. It just needs you to say yes one more time. You've heard people talk about addiction like it's dramatic, like it's needles in arms and bottles in paper bags. But the most dangerous traps aren't the ones that look like traps. They're the ones that look like freedom, like fun, like reward. The algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. It's studied your patterns. It's learned what makes you linger, what makes you ache, what makes you come back even when you swore you wouldn't. And you think you're just relaxing, just unwinding, just taking the edge off. But edges don't come off. They get duller. And a dull man is a man who can't cut through his own excuses anymore. This chapter isn't about shame. Shame is useless. It's emotional noise. This is about clarity. Clarity looks like this. You are not free if you cannot walk away. If you need it to feel okay, it owns you. If you defend it when someone questions it, it owns you. If you tell yourself, I can stop anytime, but you never do, it owns you. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. They didn't talk about dopamine or social media or streaming platforms, but they understood the mechanics of the trap. They knew that desire doesn't announce itself as an enemy. It arrives as a friend, as comfort, as deserved pleasure. And by the time you realize it's a cage, you've already built the bars yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, not for an audience, not for applause, but for his own survival, that the mind must be guarded, that external things have no power except the power we give them. He wasn't talking theory. He was the emperor of Rome. He had access to everything, every indulgence, every distraction, every escape, and he knew that if he let desire lead, the empire would fall, not because of enemies outside the gates, but because of the enemy inside his own skull. You are your own empire, and right now, you're letting barbarians through the gate because they smile and bring gifts. The trap works like this. It gives you what you want, when you want it, as much as you want it. No friction, no delay, no resistance. And in doing so, it removes the one thing that makes you strong, the ability to wait, to endure, to choose the harder right over the easier wrong. Every time you give in without pause, you train yourself to be weaker. You teach your brain that discomfort is the enemy, that waiting is suffering, that discipline is punishment, and so you optimize your life for comfort, for instant, for easy. And comfort is the slow death of every man who ever wanted to be more than he was. You weren't born to be comfortable. You were born to be capable, but capability requires resistance. It requires the word no. It requires you to feel the pull and not move, to hear the whisper and not answer. Desire will tell you that you've earned it, that you deserve it, that everyone else is doing it, so why shouldn't you? And all of that might be true. But the question isn't whether you deserve comfort. The question is whether you can afford what it costs, because comfort always costs something. It costs your edge, your hunger, your respect for yourself when you look in the mirror and know you caved again. The Stoics called this preferred indifference. Things that seem good but hold no moral weight. Pleasure isn't evil, comfort isn't sin, but neither one will save you. And if you organize your entire life around chasing them, you'll arrive at the end with nothing that matters. You'll have consumed everything and built nothing. You'll have felt everything and learned nothing. You'll have wanted everything and become nothing. This is the cage. And you built it with your own hands, one swipe at a time, one just this once at a time, one I'll start tomorrow at a time. But here's the part they don't tell you in the self-help posts and the motivation videos. The cage has no lock. You can walk out any time. Not because it's easy, but because it's a choice. It's always been a choice. The door was never bolted. You just convinced yourself it was. And the moment you stop asking permission from your cravings, the moment you stop negotiating with the part of you that wants to stay weak, the door swings open. But first, you have to see the cage for what it is. You have to stop calling it rest when it's avoidance. Stop calling it reward when it's escape. Stop calling it balance when it's surrender. The trap of desire isn't that it feels bad. It's that it feels good. That's what makes it so effective. If it hurt, you'd stop. But it doesn't hurt. Not at first. It feels like relief, like release, like you're finally catching your breath. And by the time it starts to hurt, by the time you realize you're weaker, softer, slower than you used to be, you're in so deep that stopping feels impossible. But impossible is just a word men use when they don't want to do the work. The Stoics didn't believe in impossible. They believed in will, in choice, in the understanding that you are not your urges. You are the one who decides whether to follow them. Epictetus was a slave. Literally, he had no freedom, no rights, no power, and yet he became one of the greatest philosophers in history because he understood one truth that most men never learn. You are only as free as your ability to say no. No to distraction, no to comfort, no to the easy path that everyone else is taking, and yes, to the hard thing. To the lonely thing, to the thing that doesn't pay off today, but builds the man you'll need to be tomorrow. This chapter ends where most men's lives begin, at the realization that they are not free, that they've traded their sovereignty for a screen, their strength for a scroll, their future for a feeling that lasts 5 minutes and leaves them emptier than before. You can stay in the cage if you want. No one's going to drag you out. But if you're reading this, if you're still here, then some part of you already knows. The cage you built while you weren't looking is the cage you can dismantle now that you see it. One bar at a time. One no at a time. One choice at a time. The more you feed it, the louder it screams. There's a hunger inside you that doesn't care about your goals. It doesn't care that you want to be better, stronger, cleaner, sharper. It just wants, now, again, more. And the worst part? You keep feeding it, thinking that one day it'll be satisfied. It won't. Because the hunger we're talking about isn't biological. It's not your body asking for food or rest. It's your brain, hijacked by a world designed to make you crave endlessly. You've been taught to believe that desire is natural, that wanting is human, and it is, to a point. But there's a difference between hunger that drives you and hunger that drains you. One makes you hunt, the other makes you beg. The ancient Stoics understood this better than almost anyone. They lived in a world of excess, Roman banquets, gladiatorial games, political intrigue, sexual indulgence. They had access to everything, and they watched men destroy themselves, not because they lacked anything, but because they couldn't stop wanting more. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, wrote about this constantly. He saw friends, colleagues, emperors, all consumed by desires that could never be filled. More money, more power, more pleasure, more validation. And he realized something brutal. The problem wasn't the wanting. The problem was believing that satisfaction was just one more thing away. One more drink, one more conquest, one more deal, one more like. But satisfaction never arrives. Because desire doesn't have a finish line, it has a treadmill. And every time you step on, it speeds up. Let's talk about what this looks like in your life. You tell yourself you'll check your phone for 5 minutes. 2 hours later, you're still scrolling. You don't even remember what you were looking for, but your thumb keeps moving. You tell yourself you'll have one drink, just to relax, just to take the edge off, but the edge never goes away. It just gets sharper every time you try to dull it with something external. You tell yourself you'll watch one episode, one video, one more round. And suddenly, it's 3 a.m., and you've got work in 4 hours, and you feel like a stranger in your own skin. This isn't discipline. This isn't even weakness. This is what happens when you feed a hunger that was designed never to be full. The Stoics had a term for this, pleonexia. It means the insatiable desire for more, an appetite that grows with every feeding. And they warned against it not because they were Puritans or ascetics who hated pleasure, but because they understood the math. Every time you satisfy a craving without discipline, you make the craving stronger. Every time you give in to the impulse, you teach your brain that impulses are in charge. And over time, you become a passenger in your own life. Driven by cravings you didn't choose and can't control. You're not living, you're reacting. And a man who only reacts is a man who's already lost. Here's the part that nobody wants to hear. The hunger isn't the problem, the feeding is. Because every time you feed it, you're training it, you're teaching it that if it yells loud enough, you'll give in. And it learns fast, so it yells louder, more often, in more situations. Until you can't sit still without reaching for your phone, can't be alone without turning on a screen, can't feel bored without needing a hit of something, anything, to fill the space. The space where you used to think, used to reflect, used to become. That space is gone now, filled with noise, with content, with endless distraction packaged as connection, and you wonder why you feel empty. You wonder why nothing satisfies you anymore. It's because you've been feeding the wrong hunger. The Stoics believed in a different kind of appetite, one that grows stronger the more you deny it, cheap satisfaction. They called it virtue, but don't let the word scare you. Virtue isn't about being perfect or holy or better than anyone else. It's about wanting the right things, building the right hungers. Hunger for competence, for clarity, for the ability to look yourself in the eye and not flinch. That hunger doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it doesn't need instant gratification. It's patient, it's quiet. It's the kind of hunger that makes you better, not weaker. But here's the catch. You can't build that hunger if you keep feeding the other one. You can't become disciplined while indulging every impulse. You can't build strength while avoiding discomfort. You can't forge character while chasing comfort. The two hungers are at war, and right now the wrong one is winning. Not because it's stronger, but because you keep feeding it. So what do? You stop. Not forever, not perfectly, but you stop. You let the hunger yell, you let it thrash, you let it tell you that you're missing out, that you deserve this, that everyone else is doing it. And you don't move, you sit with it, you breathe through it, you let it burn itself out. Because here's the secret, the hunger that never fills also never lasts. It feels like it will. It feels like if you don't give in right now, you'll explode. But you won't. You'll just feel uncomfortable for a while, and discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is just your body and brain recalibrating, learning that you're in charge now, that cravings don't get to drive anymore, The Stoics practiced this daily. They called it voluntary discomfort, choosing to go without, choosing hunger, choosing cold, choosing silence. Not because they hated themselves, but because they knew that comfort makes you soft, and a soft man is a man who breaks under pressure. So they made themselves hard, on purpose, gradually, consistently. And when the real storms came, and they always come, they didn't shatter. They stood. You can do the same. But it starts with one decision. Stop feeding the hunger that never fills. Stop scrolling when you're bored. Stop eating when you're not hungry. Stop drinking when you're lonely. Stop chasing when you're empty. And let the emptiness teach you what you're actually hungry for. Because underneath all the noise, all the craving, all the compulsion, there's a deeper hunger. A hunger for meaning, for purpose, for the feeling that your life is yours and not something happening to you. That hunger is worth feeding. But you can't hear it over the noise of everything else. So cut the noise. Cut the distractions. Cut the easy dopamine. And listen. The hunger that builds you is quieter than the hunger that breaks you, but it's the only one worth following. You think discipline is a prison. It's the only way out. Let's get something straight. You don't hate discipline. You hate the idea of it. You hate the way it sounds, the way it feels when someone tells you what you should do. You hate the implication that you're not free, that you're being controlled, that someone else gets to decide how you live. But here's the truth. You're already being controlled. Not by discipline, by its absence, by impulse, by craving, by the path of least resistance that leads you further from the man you said you wanted to be. Discipline isn't the cage. Discipline is the key. And every time you avoid it, you lock yourself in deeper. The Stoics understood something that modern self-help has completely forgotten. Freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want. It comes from wanting what you've chosen. And choice, real choice, requires discipline. Without discipline, you don't choose. You drift, you react, you follow whatever feeling is loudest in the moment. And feelings lie. They tell you that comfort is rest when it's really rot. They tell you that ease is reward when it's really erosion. They tell you that discipline is punishment when it's really power. Marcus Aurelius didn't need discipline to survive. He was the emperor. He could have done anything, had anything, avoided anything. But he chose discipline anyway. Every morning he woke before dawn and reminded himself of the kind of man he wanted to be, not because someone was watching, but because he was. He knew that discipline wasn't about restriction, it was about direction. It was the difference between living and being lived by. Most men avoid discipline because they think it means saying no to everything they enjoy. But that's not discipline. That's deprivation. Discipline is saying no to the things that weaken you so you can say yes to the things that build you. It's saying no to the scroll so you can say yes to the book. No to the binge so you can say yes to the workout. No to the excuse so you can say yes to the effort. It's not about becoming a monk or a machine. It's about becoming deliberate. And deliberate men don't get swept away by every craving, every notification, every impulse disguised as inspiration. They choose, and then they follow through. That's it. That's the whole game. But here's where most men fail. They try to build discipline everywhere at once. They wake up one Monday and decide they're going to fix everything. They're going to work out every day, eat clean, quit their vices, start a business, read every night, meditate, journal, cold plunge, and never waste another second. And by Wednesday, they're back where they started, exhausted, ashamed, convinced that discipline isn't for them. But discipline isn't built in explosions. It's built in inches. One decision, one day, one small win that you stack on top of yesterday's small win. The Stoics called this progressive training. You don't start by running a marathon. You start by putting on your shoes. You don't start by quitting everything. You start by choosing one thing you will not negotiate with yourself about. One anchor, one non-negotiable. One line you will not cross no matter how loud the craving gets. For some men, it's the morning. They decide that no matter what, they will get up when the alarm goes off. No snooze, no bargaining, just up. For others, it's the phone. No scrolling before a certain time, no apps in the bedroom, no numbing out when the discomfort hits. For others, it's the substance, the drink, the habit, the thing they know is stealing their future one day at a time. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's yours and that you keep it. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you become a man who keeps promises. And every time you break one, you become a man who doesn't. And the man who doesn't keep promises to himself will never be free. He'll always be at the mercy of his moods, his cravings, his circumstances. He'll always need the world to cooperate in order to feel okay, and the world never cooperates. Discipline is the only thing that makes you okay, regardless of the world. It's the foundation, the bedrock, the thing that holds when everything else shakes. Epictetus, who lived as a slave before he became a philosopher, had no control over his circumstances. He couldn't choose his freedom, he couldn't change his status, but he could choose his mind, his actions, his responses. And that internal discipline, that refusal to be controlled by what he couldn't control, made him freer than most men who were never in chains. Because freedom isn't about external circumstances, it's about internal sovereignty, and sovereignty starts with discipline. The discipline to wake up when you don't feel like it. The discipline to train when it's cold and dark and no one's watching. The discipline to sit in silence instead of reaching for the screen. The discipline to choose the hard conversation over the easy lie. The discipline to build instead of consume. That's not restriction, that's liberation. Because the man who can govern himself doesn't need anyone else to do it for him. He doesn't need motivation, he doesn't need inspiration, he doesn't need perfect conditions. He just needs the next right action, and then the one after that. And over time, those actions compound into a life that looks nothing like the one he used to live. A life where he's not reacting, he's responding, where he's not avoiding, he's advancing, where he's not hoping things get better, he's making them better. But it all starts with the thing you're avoiding, the thing you keep putting off, the thing you know why you should do, but convince yourself you'll do tomorrow. Tomorrow is a lie. Tomorrow is where discipline goes to die. There's only today, right now, this moment. And in this moment, you either choose discipline or you choose drift. You either take one step toward the man you want to be, or you take one step further from him. And the gap between those two men isn't built in one decision. It's built in 1,000 small ones that you either make or avoid. So stop avoiding. Stop telling yourself that discipline is for other people, that it's too late, that you're too far gone. You're not. You're just uncomfortable, and discomfort is the price of change. The Stoics didn't avoid discomfort. They practiced it. On purpose. They slept on hard floors. They fasted. They went without. Not because they were masochists, but because they knew that if they couldn't handle discomfort when they chose it, they'd never handle it when life forced it. And life always forces it. So they trained. Every day. In small ways. And when the storms came, and they stood firm. You can do the same, but it starts with one choice. One act of discipline that you follow through on today. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when conditions are perfect. Today. Because the discipline you avoid is the freedom you want, and you'll never be free until you prove to yourself that you can choose the hard thing and keep choosing it. That's the work. That's the path. That's the only way out. What you tolerate, you become. There's dead weight in your life. You know what it is. You've known for a while. It's the relationship that drains you, the habit that weakens you, the excuse you keep recycling, The person who takes and never gives. The environment that keeps you small. You've told yourself you'll deal with it later, when the time is right, when it's less complicated. But it's never less complicated, and the longer you let dead branches stay attached, the more they rot the whole tree. This chapter is about the cuts you've been avoiding. Not the easy ones, the hard ones, the ones that hurt, the ones that feel like betrayal or failure or loss, the ones you justify by telling yourself that it's not that bad, that it could be worse, that maybe it'll get better. It won't. Dead branches don't come back to life. They just take resources from the parts of you that are still trying to grow. The Stoics were brutal about this, not cruel, honest. They believed that everything in your life should serve a purpose, and if it doesn't, it shouldn't be there. Not because they were cold or detached, but because they understood that life is short and energy is finite. And every minute you spend on something that doesn't build you is a minute you lose forever. Seneca wrote letters to his friend Lucilius, and one of the recurring themes was this: stop wasting time on people and things that don't matter. Not in a selfish way, in a protective way. Because if you don't protect your time, your energy, your attention, someone else will take it, and they'll take it for things that serve them, not you. The dead branches in your life come in many forms. Sometimes it's a friendship that used to be good, but now just feels heavy. You don't grow when you're around them. You shrink, you perform, you pretend. And every time you leave, you feel a little more drained, a little more distant. Not from yourself. Sometimes it's a habit you picked up years ago that made sense then but doesn't now. It was fun, it was social, it was a release. But now, it's just a pattern, a loop, a thing you do because you've always done it, not because it adds anything to your life. Sometimes it's a mindset, a belief you've carried since childhood, a story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of, and that story keeps you safe, but it also keeps you stuck. Sometimes it's a person, someone you love, someone you've invested in, someone who used to lift you but now only leans. And you keep holding on because letting go feels like giving up. But holding on to something that's dying doesn't make you loyal. It makes you a hostage. The cut is always harder than you think it'll be, because dead branches don't fall off cleanly. They're tangled. They're familiar. They've been there so long that removing them feels like removing a part of yourself. And maybe it is. Maybe you have to lose the version of yourself that tolerated what you shouldn't have. Maybe you have to grieve the time you spent watering something that was never going to bloom. Maybe you have to accept that the cost of growing is leaving some things behind. The Stoics didn't avoid loss. They expected it. They knew that every choice has a cost, and the cost of keeping dead weight is always higher than the cost of letting it go. So they practiced amor fati, love of fate. They accepted what had to be done, even when it hurt. Not because they were heartless, but because they loved themselves enough to protect their future from their past. Cutting dead branches isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. Clear about what you want, what you're building, who you're becoming, and honest enough to admit that not everyone and everything gets to come with you. Here's how you know it's time to cut. If it drains more than it fills, it's time. If you defend it more than you enjoy it, it's time. If you keep hoping it'll change but it never does, it's time. If it keeps you small, stuck, or safe in ways that no longer serve you, it's time. The hard part isn't knowing. The hard part is acting. Because action requires that you hurt someone, or disappoint someone, or let someone down, and you've spent your whole life trying not to do that. But here's the truth. You're already letting someone down, yourself. Every day you tolerate what you shouldn't. You betray the man you said you wanted to become. Every day you stay in the situation you know is wrong. You teach yourself that your boundaries don't matter. Every day you avoid the cut. The dead branch takes more from you, and eventually there's nothing left to take. The Stoics believed in radical honesty, not with others, with yourself. And radical honesty sounds like this: This isn't working. This isn't who I am anymore. This isn't where I'm going, and I have to let it go, not because I hate it, not because I'm angry, but because I love my future more than I fear the discomfort of the cut. Most men wait until they're forced to cut, until the relationship explodes, until the habit breaks them, until the environment becomes unbearable. They wait until there's no choice left, but by then, the damage is done. Let's be specific. You have a friend who only calls when they need something, who talks but never listens, who drains your energy and gives nothing back. You've told yourself it's complicated, that you have history, that they're going through something, and maybe they are. But that doesn't make it your job to stay. Compassion doesn't require self-destruction. You can wish them well and still walk away. You have a habit, drinking, scrolling, gambling, porn, whatever, that you've convinced yourself is under control. But you think about it more than you should. You hide it more than you'd admit. You've tried to quit before and couldn't. And every time you indulge it, you feel a little weaker, a little more ashamed, a little more like a man who doesn't keep his word. That's a dead branch. And it's not going to fall off on its own. You have to cut it. You have a job that pays the bills but kills your soul. That keeps you comfortable but stunts your growth. You tell yourself you'll leave when you're ready, when you have enough saved, when the timing's right. But the timing is never right, and comfort is a trap disguised as stability. That's a dead branch too. And the longer you stay, the harder it gets to leave. You have a relationship, romantic, familial, professional, that you've outgrown. You're not the same person you were when it started, and neither are they. But you're holding on because letting go feels like failure, like admitting you were wrong, like losing something you invested in. But investment doesn't justify attachment. Sunk costs aren't a reason to stay. If it's not growing, it's dying. And if it's dying, it's taking you with it. The Stoics understood something that modern culture refuses to accept. Not everything is meant to last. Some people are in your life for a season. Some habits served you once and don't anymore. Some beliefs kept you safe when you were young, but limit you now that you're not. And trying to force permanence on what was meant to be temporary is how you stay stuck. You don't honor the past by clinging to it. You honor it by learning from it and moving forward. Here's the process. First, you acknowledge the dead branch. You stop pretending it's not there. You stop defending it. You stop hoping it'll magically revive. You name it, out loud to yourself. This friendship is draining me. This habit is weakening me. This environment is keeping me small. Second, you decide, not someday, not when it's easier. Now, you decide that you're going to cut it, that you're going to protect your future from your past. You decide that your growth matters more than your comfort. Third, you act, quickly, cleanly, without drama. You don't announce it to the world. You don't burn bridges for the sake of burning them. You just remove yourself from the situation. You stop engaging. You stop explaining. You stop negotiating. You cut. And yes, it hurts. It's supposed to. Growth always costs something, and what it costs is the version of you that was willing to tolerate less than you deserve. But here's what happens after the cut. Space, clarity, energy. Room for something new, something better, something that actually serves the man you're becoming. The Stoics called this negative visualization. Imagining life without the thing you're clinging to. And what they found, over and over, was this. Life without the dead weight was better, lighter, clearer. Not perfect, but better. And better is all you need. You don't need a perfect life. You need a life that's yours. A life that's not crowded with things you tolerate because you're afraid to cut. A life where every relationship, every habit, every choice is intentional. Where you're not just reacting to what's in front of you. You're building what you want around you. That life starts with the cut. The one you've been avoiding. The one that scares you. The one that feels like loss but is actually liberation. Because what you're losing isn't worth what you're gaining. You're losing dead weight. You're gaining yourself. And yourself, the real version, the one that's been buried under years of tolerance and compromise, is worth fighting for. The Stoics didn't tolerate weakness in themselves, not because they were harsh, but because they respected themselves too much to let dead branches steal their vitality. They pruned, constantly, ruthlessly. Lovin', Galai. They removed what didn't serve, what didn't grow, what didn't align, and in doing so, they made space for what mattered. You can do the same. But you have to be willing to hold the blade, to make the cut, to let the branch fall and trust that what's left will be stronger for it. This is the work. And it's not done once, it's done continuously. Because life keeps adding weight, and you have to keep removing it. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity, out of love for the man you're becoming. Cut the dead branches, not tomorrow, today. And watch what grows in the space you create. You don't get to choose the storm, you get to choose how you stand in it. Everything you've built will be tested. Not maybe, not if you're unlucky. It will be tested, guaranteed. The relationship will hit turbulence. The business will face crisis. The body will break down. The plan will fail. The storm will come. And when it does, all the theory, all the motivation, all the plans you made on sunny days, none of it will matter. What will matter is whether you can stand. Not win, not fix it all immediately, not avoid the pain, just stand and keep standing. This is the chapter no one wants to read, because it's not about hacks or strategies or clever techniques. It's about endurance, about what you do when everything goes wrong and there's no way out but through. The Stoics were obsessed with this. They called it amor fati, love of fate. Not in some toxic positivity way where you pretend everything's fine when it's not, but in the sense that you accept what is. You don't waste energy wishing it were different. You don't collapse into victimhood. You see the storm, you name it, and you stand in it. Marcus Aurelius faced plague, war, betrayal, and the constant threat of assassination. Epictetus was enslaved, crippled, and stripped of every external freedom. Seneca watched friends executed, lived under the reign of Nero, and eventually was ordered to take his own life. These weren't men who lived easy lives and philosophized about hardship. They lived the hardship, and their philosophy was forged in it. They didn't write about strength from a place of comfort. They wrote about it from the middle of the storm. And what they learned was this: the storm doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't care about your progress. It doesn't care that you are finally getting your life together. It just comes. And when it does, you have two choices. You can break, or you can bend. Eking looks like collapse, like giving up, like deciding that since it didn't work out the way you wanted, nothing matters anymore. Like throwing away all the progress because the setback feels too big. Like letting one bad day become a bad week, a bad month, a bad year. Bending looks different. It looks like feeling the full weight of the storm, the pain, the loss, the frustration, and not letting it destroy you. It looks like acknowledging that this sucks, that it hurts, that it's not fair, and then doing the next right thing anyway. Not because you feel like it, not because you're motivated, but because you're still standing, and standing men take steps. The Stoics practiced something they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They didn't do it to be pessimistic or fatalistic. They did it to be prepared. They would imagine, in detail, everything that could go wrong. The business could fail. The loved one could die. The health could collapse. The reputation could be ruined. And they would ask themselves, if this happened, could I survive it? And the answer always was yes. Not because they were superhuman, but because they understood that survival isn't about circumstances. It's about response. You can survive almost anything if you don't add suffering on top of suffering, if you don't make it mean something about your worth, your future, your identity, if you just let it be what it is, a storm, painful, difficult, temporary, but not the end. Most men collapse not because the storm is too strong, but because they believe the storm means something it doesn't. They believe it means they're cursed, that they're not meant to succeed, that the universe is against them. But the storm doesn't mean anything. It's just weather. And weather passes. Here's what you need to know about storms. They reveal who you are. They don't create it. They reveal it. If you're disciplined in the easy times, the storm will test whether that discipline is real or performative. If you've built your identity on external success, the storm will shatter it. If you've built your identity on internal principles, the storm will strengthen it. The storm doesn't care about your goals, but it will show you whether your foundation is solid, and if it's not, the storm is a gift, because it's better to discover a weak foundation now than later. Better to rebuild while you still can. The Stoics believed that obstacles weren't interruptions to the path, they were the path. That every challenge, every setback, every storm was an opportunity to practice what they preached. To prove that their philosophy wasn't just theory, it was survival. And it worked. Not because they avoided pain, but because they used pain as fuel. Every hardship became a test. Every storm became a forge. And they emerged harder, stronger, clearer. Not unbroken, but undefeated. Here's how you stand in the storm. First, you accept it. Fully, immediately. You don't waste energy denying it or wishing it away. You don't ask, why me? Because the answer is always the same. Why not you? You're not special. The storm doesn't skip anyone. And pretending you should be exempt only makes it worse. Second, you zoom out. You remind yourself that this moment, this pain, this setback, this loss, is not your whole life. It's one chapter, one page, one line, and you've survived every hard moment before this one. You'll survive this one too. Third, you focus on what you can control. You can't control the storm, but you can control your response. You can't control the outcome, but you can control the effort. You can't control how long it lasts, but you can control how you show up today. And today is all you have. The Stoics didn't try to control what they couldn't control. They let it go, and they poured all their energy into the one thing they could control, themselves, their thoughts, their actions, their character. That's it. That's the whole practice. And in the storm, that's all you need. You don't need to see the end. You just need to take the next step. You don't need to fix everything. You just need to not make it worse. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to act despite the fear. That's what standing looks like. Not perfect, not pretty, not without pain, just upright, still moving, still breathing, still in the fight. The Stoics knew that life was full of storms. That was the deal. You don't get to choose whether the storm comes. You only get to choose what kind of man you are when it does. A man who collapses at the first sign of difficulty, or a man who stands, who bends but doesn't break, who feels the weight but keeps moving. The world doesn't need more men who thrive in perfect conditions. It needs men who can function in chaos, who can lead in crisis, who can hold the line when everything's falling apart. That's not about talent or luck or privilege. It's about training. And the training happens now. In the small storms, in the daily discomforts, in the moments when you don't feel like it but you do it anyway. Because when the big storm comes, and it will come, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll fall to the level of your training. And if you've trained yourself to quit when it's hard, you'll quit. But if you've trained yourself to stand, you'll stand. And standing is enough. You don't have to win. You don't have to dominate. You don't have to come out unscathed. You just have to be the man who didn't quit, who didn't break, who took the hit and kept walking. That's the man the storm crow eats, and that's the man you're becoming. One storm at a time. You can lie to the world. You can't lie to him. There's a version of you that everyone else sees. The one you curate, the one you perform, the one who says the right things, projects confidence, hides the cracks. And then there's the version that exists in the mirror at 3 a.m., the one who knows every excuse, every compromise, every time you said you'd change and didn't. That version doesn't buy your performance. He sees through it. And at the end of every day, you have to face him. This final chapter is about that man, the one in the mirror. Because everything we've talked about, discipline, silence, cutting dead weight, standing in storms, all of it collapses if you can't look yourself in the eye, if you can't sit with the truth of who you are versus who you said you'd be. The Stoics believed that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. Not because they were narcissists, but because they understood that if you can't trust yourself, you can't trust anything. If you break promises to yourself, why would you keep them to anyone else? If you lie to yourself, how would you recognize truth anywhere else? The man in the mirror is the only honest witness to your life. He's there for every decision, every compromise, every moment of courage and every moment of cowardice, and he keeps score. Not out of judgment, out of clarity. Because you need to know. You need to know if you're becoming who you said you wanted to be, or if you're just talking about it. You need to know if your actions match your words or if you're living a performance. You need to know if you can be trusted by yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations as a form of self-interrogation. Every entry was a question. Did I live according to my principles today? Did I let fear control me? Did I act with integrity? He wasn't writing for applause. He was writing for honesty. Because honesty is the only thing that creates change. You can't fix what you won't acknowledge. You can't grow past what you won't face. And the man in the mirror forces you to face it. Most men avoid him. They keep busy. They stay distracted. They surround themselves with noise so they never have to sit in silence and ask the hard questions. Questions like, am I proud of how I'm living? Am I becoming stronger or just older? Am I building something real or am I just consuming? Am I the man I'd respect if I met him? These questions hurt, because the answers aren't always what you want them to be. But the Stoics believed that pain was the beginning of wisdom. That discomfort was the signal that you're close to something true. And the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is always better than the lie. Because the lie keeps you stuck. The truth sets you free, even when it's brutal. Here's what the man in the mirror knows. He knows when you're making excuses. When you say you're too busy, too tired, too stressed, he knows. He was there when you scrolled for an hour, when you binge-watched instead of worked, when you chose comfort over commitment. He doesn't judge, he just knows. He knows when you're lying to yourself. When you say, just this once, for the 10th time this month. When you rationalize the habit you swore you'd quit. When you convince yourself that you'll start tomorrow. He knows tomorrow is a lie. He knows when you're hiding. When you're performing for others, but not building for yourself. When you're pretending to be okay, but you're barely holding it together. When you're smiling on the outside, but empty on the inside. He sees the gap. The one between who you are and who you pretend to be. And that gap, that distance between your performance and your reality, that's where your integrity lives, or dies. The Stoics had a word for this. Euthymia. It means tranquility, peace. But not the peace that comes from having everything you want. The peace that comes from being aligned, from knowing that your actions match your values, that your life reflects your principles, that the man in the mirror and the man in the world are the same person. That's the peace worth having. And it only comes from honesty. Not brutal honesty with others, that's often just cruelty disguised as virtue. Brutal honesty with yourself. The kind that makes you uncomfortable, that forces you to admit when you're wrong, when you're weak, when you're slipping. The kind that refuses to let you hide behind excuses or rationalizations, or the stories you tell yourself to avoid the work. Here's the practice. Every night, before you sleep, sit with the man in the mirror, literally or figuratively, doesn't matter, and ask him 3 questions. Did I keep my word to myself today? Not to anyone else, to yourself. Did you do what you said you'd do? Did you honor the commitments you made in private, or did you let yourself slide? Did I act with integrity today? Did you make choices you're proud of? Did you take the easy path or the right path? Did you compromise your values for comfort, or did you stand firm? Am I becoming who I want to be? Not who others want you to be, not who you think you should be, who you, deep down, want to be. Is today's version of you closer to that man than yesterday's version? Or are you just treading water? These questions aren't meant to shame you, they're meant to guide you. Because the answers will tell you everything you need to know. And if the answers hurt, good. That means you're close to something real. The Stoics believed that the unexamined life wasn't worth living. That a man who never questioned himself, never challenged himself, never held himself accountable, that man was asleep. Going through motions, living on autopilot, becoming whatever the world shaped him into. But the examined life, the life where you regularly sit with the man in the mirror and ask hard questions, that life is awake, conscious, intentional, alive. And that's the life worth living, not perfect, not without mistakes, but honest. And honesty builds everything. It builds trust, with yourself, with others. It builds integrity, the alignment between who you are and who you say you are. It builds strength, because you stop hiding from yourself. And when you stop hiding, you start growing. Here's the truth. You will fail. You'll break promises. You'll compromise. You'll slip. You'll have days where the man in the mirror is disappointed. And that's okay. Failure isn't the problem. Denial is. The Stoics failed all the time. Marcus Aurelius wrote about his failures constantly. He got angry when he shouldn't have. He let fear control him. He acted in ways he regretted. But he didn't pretend it didn't happen. He faced it. He named it. He learned from it. And then he tried again. That's all you can do. Face the man in the mirror. Hear what he has to say. And adjust. Not tomorrow. Today. Because the man in the mirror isn't your enemy. He's your only real friend. He's the one who'll tell you the truth when everyone else is lying. He's the one who'll hold you accountable when no one else will. He's the one who'll remind you of who you're capable of being when you've forgotten. But you have to listen. You have to stop avoiding him. Stop drowning him out with noise and distraction. You have to sit in silence and let him speak. And when he does, you have to be brave enough to hear it. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because the truth is the only thing that will set you free. The truth about where you are. The truth about where you're going. The truth about whether you're proud of the man you're becoming. And if the answer is no, that's not the end. That's the beginning, because now you know, and knowing is the first step toward changing. The Stoics believed that philosophy wasn't about abstract concepts or intellectual games. It was about living.